Hi, everybody. It's great to be here and be joined with so many esteemed panelists. So thank you. Um, I was thinking over the weekend how to really answer this question. Um, education at its core, I was really thinking of an analogy of what it is. And I thought about, really a learner driver analogy. So when we look at the three components of what education is, it's developing knowledge, it's developing skills, but it's also developing confidence as well. So if we take that analogy that, developing knowledge, it's about critical thinking. For the learner driver, it's, really developing knowledge of, the speed limits, what is the rules of the road, how you avoid crashing. In terms of developing skills, it's that practical application. So it's, really, how do I do a 3-point turn? How do I navigate reversing? How do I change gears? How do I put petrol in the car? And thirdly, developing confidence. That's about belief in one's own judgment and belief in one's own abilities. So, in terms of the analogy, it's about, yeah, I can drive safely. Yeah, I can actually think that I'm not going to crash. And actually, yeah, I can drive on my own now. I don't actually need somebody sitting beside me. Ultimately, education is about enabling pupils to find out who they are and why they matter on this planet. And I think, a lot of, Anand and I have done a lot of work in this space, and we'll talk to you about this in a moment. But from working with a lot of young people, I don't think they truly understand who they are and why they matter. They really lack a lot of confidence in terms of their own self belief. And I think we really, really need to work on that. We need to help them find their place in society and feel that they belong. At the moment, we have so many young people not knowing where they belong and where their place is. Whoever they are, they've got a place somewhere, and we need to make sure that they feel a sense of belonging, so that they don't become disenchanted with life. We need to
Moi
give
juste
them
audience,
access to
pour fixe à
knowledge
écouter. You can do
to
that.
help them to understand their experiences, because
Quelqu'un peut
all
pas suivre ça
life
chose, hein?
is a
Ouais.
series of experiences. And we need to be able to teach them, what are those experiences teaching them. So for me, that is really my thoughts about what education is at its core.
Thanks, Louise. Yeah, really fascinating to hear that. As I was, I guess, also reflecting on the question, I think there's an important nuance and distinction to make between, I guess, what is learning and what is education. And so I guess there's a whole load of overlap there. So I think, as I was thinking about this, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with kind of like game theory and stuff like that, but there's this notion of learning is in an infinite game. As soon as we're born, as soon as we pass away, learning is a process. It's a journey that happens throughout, I guess, our lives, wherever that is. Education, on the other hand, I guess, is the finite game within that infinite, right? So education often has structures around it. There's a system behind it. Often it's kind of bound by, I guess, place, maybe a subject, maybe a time frame. And there's often like an outcome that's associated with that. So for example, going to school, right? You go to school for a period of time, you're in a physical location, and hopefully at the end of school, you'll get some GCSEs, as an example. Obviously, within that, I guess, space, learning is the foundational kind of marker for what success is to an education system. And then obviously within that system, there's a whole load of stakeholders, not just the learners, but also the teachers, the teaching assistant, the heads of department, the head teacher, the caretaker who takes part of the school. So there's so many different kind of elements that goes into making what education is. So I guess education is the most intentional part, I guess, of that infinite game that we're all a part of. I hope kind of as time moves forward, we can kind of break out of some traditional notions of what that education is, and enable it to feel more like the infinite game of what learning is, that's relevant for us throughout our lives. So I'll leave that there.
Thank you. Yeah, I had the same problem as everybody else is trying to work this out. At the core of education, education is the process of turning potential into possibility. See, that was a good AI one. The thing with me, I'm well aware of education because coming from a mixed heritage, I'm 70 this year, and every time, like I teach, I've taught in every unit, secure units, colleges, university, primary school, secondary school, and things like this. And one of the things that I found about it is that it should be able to give the people the potential, that all the things are there, everything is actually in place. But the problem is we always find that so the way you should learn how to do maths is the way you should be how to learn to do English. And the other thing about when I work with other countries, their educational system is completely different, and their results are completely different by their attitude towards their students on what they should do. The one thing I find about education, it's not about transferring knowledge. What you said about confidentiality and curiosity and stuff like that, it's about expanding on things like this. I've got ADHD, so I have to keep on referring to my notes. It's to take ideas, abilities, and ambitions to help people to turn things into something real. So when I was younger, I always wanted to join the military, but I ended up working in a pram factory. But when I did go to join the military gave me the knowledge, because this is what I actually wanted to do. So it's marrying up the needs of a student and what other people want to do. The other thing that I find education is it is a change. It is a change in the process. I like what the way the attitude towards technology is, because now I see people banning phones. Now, working in designing technology, everybody uses their phone to take pictures. So then it's all these, it's a swing and roundabout. In the end, I find that what we need to do is that the learner may have the ability to succeed, but things are actually blocking it. And it's when we have things like this, it opens up all doors to that particular thing, but it's actually keeping the thing going. I was on the Parliamentary Committee for Digital Skills, and I used to love going to the House of Parliament and sitting there, and we would all talk about everything else until somebody decided this is not a good idea. We're going to stop this group after 3 years. But change does need to be made. So.
Hi, everybody. I'm Louisa. So very much similar to what everybody else has already said. What is education at its core? For me, education is opening up people's eyes, showing people what possibilities are. It's moving from what I know to what could be, to having dreams, ambitions, But I think sometimes education at its core can be misunderstood. It's not about getting identical results from identical people, because we're not identical. We're all very different. So we all think differently, we all process differently. So I think education at its core should be around adapting its systems to meet people's needs rather than expecting everybody to adapt themselves to meet the system. I think education is something that should be filling buckets. Education shouldn't be filling buckets. It should be lighting pathways. So it's showing people it's teaching me about our history, where we've come from, but also what is possible and where we can go, and that we don't have ceilings. I always teach people that anything is possible as long as we're willing to put the work in, and that can look differently for everybody else. But if we're in a system that explores that and that celebrates that, rather than looking at our differences as something that we should be ashamed of or something we should be hiding. But education at its core is showing people who they can be, not who they should be.
Thank you very much. I think the good things about being the last person is that you can just agree with everyone, pass it on. So, well, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, okay. And I think for me, the education at its core is the ability to transfer those knowledge and skill that's acquired during the process of learning to implement it in the real world environment. I think if you look at our journey from, when we are a toddler or to whatever age we are, so we're learning how to stand up, to walk, to use that during our daily life. Then we're going to learn about the alphabets and word to be able to read or write. And then so on. So go to university, when you study, for instance, and to become a nurse, to become a physiotherapist, to become an engineer, etc., you're not acquiring those knowledge just for the sake of the knowledge. So you have to use that in the real world environment for the benefit of yourself or your community that you are within. So I think during that process, I see that there are two parts. So the part one is the specialist knowledge and the skills, which is crucially important. And the universities and organizations heavily focus on that part. But the part that is becoming problematic is the other side of it, which is the softer skills part of it, which I think the universities have a huge job on that. But unfortunately, that part is not being highlighted enough. So you go to university, you study physiotherapy, nursing, etc. You can have the specialist knowledge, but when you come in to implement and apply those knowledge, the softer skills are the one that make you able to do that. So if you don't skills, if you don't have confidence, if you don't have emotional intelligence, if you don't have physical intelligence, if you don't have digital efficiencies these days, then it doesn't matter how good you are in those skills that you have, because you cannot implement it. And I think connected to what we discussed in the keynote speaker about the need and the 1 million people out of the job, etc. I think the part of the education role for those people is not just a specific skills. I'm sure those people, majority of them have intelligence and they can acquire those skills and the learning and knowledge. But the problem might be during that the softer skills that's lacking for them to feel the sense of belonging, to be confident, to have the mental health and mental well, to be able to come out to the community and be able to connect with everyone. And I think during that 3 or 4 years or 6 years that people go to university, I think the biggest part that I've seen, at least when I was more involved in teaching, from my students from the year 1, 2, 3, 4, I see that their softer skills improve significantly from the day that come into university until they leave. And I think that's the one that get you into the community to be able to use your skills. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for your insights. I think it's very, very clear that everybody's highly invested in the conversation about young people. Many of us have, children that are about to go into the world of work and enter this kind of environment. Obviously, the government's shown quite clearly that they are taking quite strong action in terms of kind of reversing the impact that we've seen this gap now and trying to aspire to be like countries that have, a lot more resource and support for their young people. So it's great that this conversation is happening. And I agree, the whole ethos of this event is that we've got the access now. And at the University of East London, this is very, very true. We're a widening participation university. But it's what we do with those students while they're here. We have 3 years to work with them. And as Ali said, I work a lot with employers, and the conversation is always, and it's a little bit frustrating sometimes because students come, they put their head down, they try to get a first, and then they're told at an interview they're not curious enough. And, it is quite frustrating, but how do universities kind of pivot and adapt to teaching those softer skills? At the University of East London, we have an embedded module that teaches behavioral skills more predominantly that all of our students take. And this has now become actually a really central focus of our education at UEL and how we can help transform those lives for students. But obviously in a world full of AI where education can almost be self-sourced by young people, I'm going to turn to Anand and Daniel first because, you have sort of technological products to support. And obviously with the work-based learning, it's really much a focus for us at UEL. So Project Chakra and what you're doing there is just so important. And we're trying to engage with more with these kinds of resources for our students. So can you tell us how we're going to use technology positively instead of, this fear that it's going to take everybody's jobs?
Yeah, I guess, well, firstly, at Project Chakra, we actually don't use technology as part of our work. Maybe to answer that question, maybe it'll be useful for me to just share a very quick story. Has anyone heard of the Mary's Room thought experiment before? So maybe it's useful for me to share. So let me introduce you to all to someone named Mary. Now, Mary is very, very unique, and she's been living a very unique life. Mary, for her whole life, has only ever experienced seeing black and white colors. She lives in a black and white room, eats black and white food, and watches black and white TV. Now, even though Mary has never seen color before, she is an absolute expert in color vision and knows all the science behind it. So intellectually, Mary knows everything about color. She's just never seen color before. Now, anyway, one day, something crazy happens. And as Mary is watching her black and white TV and eating her black and white food, the TV screen malfunctions and Mary sees color for the very first time. Unbelievable, right? And remember, obviously, Mary intellectually, she knows everything about color, but she's just never seen color before. So the question is, has Mary learned anything new? Who thinks Mary has learned something new as a result of seeing color for the first time? Yeah, most of us, right? And so there's something called the knowledge argument, which suggests that there are non-physical properties in knowledge that can only be accurately gained through conscious experience. And subjective qualities you can't accurately describe or measure are known as qualia and are unique to the person experiencing them. Essentially, the facts can't explain the mental state of what it actually feels like to actually experience it. And so I think this same phenomena is happening when it comes to our learning and education systems today, right? We're all leaving these systems as Mary, right? Learning today is dominated by consuming content, whether that's through lectures, textbooks, online courses, etc., etc. And what's missing is connecting the real, I guess, personal experience to the intellect, right? So how can we enable learners to kind of feel the learning outcomes, experience something in real life? Because I think the analogy I use through the work that we do at Project Chakra is how can we connect the head, heart, and hands, right? So the head being kind of the knowledge, the information, and then obviously the heart being kind of the emotion, the feeling, and then the hands kind of the physical application of that. So I guess the way we enable kind of learners to do that is we don't, sit there and talk to people like this in many ways, but we bring kind of real development challenges into the classroom in a safe environment still, through using kind of gamified role play simulations that enable kind of learners to feel the learning outcomes first, and then through reflected debriefs, reflect on what they're doing. And then beyond that, we then open up the pathway beyond the classroom for them to continue engaging further, whether that's locally or also internationally. Whereas kind of traditional learning is often kind of consume information, memorize that information, and then regurgitate that in the exam. So we've kind of flipped it on its head to try and enable learners to feel the learning outcomes first through experience, through learning by doing, reflect on those learnings, and then inspire them to take action beyond the learning experience. And obviously that's now really exacerbated through AI now, where the value of information has completely plateaued, right? As the supply of information goes up, the value of it goes down. So what's really required nowadays is providing experience, providing context. That's where the real value, I guess, comes from. So the more we can do to enable kind of learners to feel the learning outcomes, learn through doing, learn through experience, I guess the better we can develop their whole selves, and enable them to better navigate the complexities that our modern world has to offer.
Thank you. Yes, I've been looking forward to this part because AI is literally a 24-hour, 7 days a week for me. Initially, when I started, luckily enough, I mean, I tell people what my age is purely because from a technology perspective, because when I went to school, there was no technology. I was asked to do technology, but it was all figures. I didn't know that I was dyslexic, so therefore there wasn't no point in doing it, hence the reason why I joined the military. Moving fast on, I didn't get diagnosed with it until I was 40. But by that time, I already had a business and I was using technology. And it's funny, interesting what you were saying about the technology, that is a very similar pattern of what I did, because I worked with 6 colleges, Meta headsets, solar paneling, central heating. And one of the things that they taught was to work with car charging points that never actually exist. Everybody loved it. The only problem is, oh, we can only have one headset. We don't want to use that. Moving fast forward, I've retired for the 3rd time, and somebody came back and said, listen, you're an AI expert. You were doing AI before AI came about. So I said, yes, I will. Yeah, I do. The models that I actually build now is predominantly used with AI, but what it does, it makes people do things. And the way we make people do things is the first thing that we need to do is to establish what their needs are. So, for example, if I say to you, okay, now you're going to do this, and I said to you, you're going to do this. So the problem is they have 2 different needs. So I used the AI and I built a program. And what the program was really simple. All you do is you use the knowledge that technology has about young people, experiences, and stuff like this. You add the course that they're actually in, and then you ask them what problems they have. And the thing about what made the program work really well is it doesn't take their name. It doesn't take their address. So they feel that they can input data without it going anywhere. The results are, when they do their coursework, the results of the project is when they put the data in, it gets analyzed and it gives a program out to the teacher. So the teacher, you're my teacher, so I don't like your model, but one of the things I'm saying to him is, this whiteboard is too bright. These lights are too bright. It's too quiet in this room. So therefore, they're taking responsibility and they're changing the system on how AI could actually be used. Everybody's scared about AI in the sense of, okay, it's going to hide this, it's going to do this, we shouldn't actually do that. But the thing about it is, if you teach the students how to use it responsibly, in the sense of, what do I want to use it for? Let's do it this way, you'll find that it is good. And so this ethical way, the legal way, all these things are the most important things to do before you even let them have the knowledge. Because I guarantee if you went around this room and said to the people, okay, what AI do you use? They say ChatGPT, that's a good. Do you use projects? What's projects? Oh, are you using a public? As I said, do you know what a moat is? And they think it's a castle. You see, so there's loads of things is. My final thing I'd like to say about AI, one of the programs, the reason why I like my program is I learned it from the Americans because they called it a moonshot. And they say, your program should be a moonshot. I said, what's a moonshot? And they said, well, because when they went to go to space, they said, we're going to shoot to the moon. And everybody said, no, it can't be done. They said, no, you definitely can't do that. You can't go to Mars. And now what happens is in technology, you create programs that are called moonshots. And then what that does, it tells you, I'm going to build something that in theory should be impossible. And then it actually works out possible. Hence the reason why the projects are worked so on. So now we're working, we've done version 1, we've done version 2, we've done version 3. And then literally this week for the young lady over there, we created the neurodiversity program for her. The first version took 7 days, me sitting in front of a computer. The second version took me a day and a half. Doing her program took me an afternoon because the data is in there and nobody else knows about it, but everybody knows about it because you go and ask anybody about neurodiversity and it's in there. And it's not just for neurodiversity people, it's for everybody. Not my program, I'm talking about AI. So, sorry, I went on a bit.
Hi, yes, so I agree. I think AI can be amazing and it can advance people's lives so much. It gives people opportunities that they never had before, and it takes away the monopoly from other people. But I think the responsibility of the educator is to teach people how to use AI, like what you said, how to use it properly. It shouldn't be something that we should be avoiding, that we should be hiding away from. It's just something that we need to learn how to use properly. And I think the educator's role is something, it moves on from the how do we get information, but what type of questions are we asking? What sort of information do we want to get? And we need to teach humanity. That's what the educator's responsibility is as well, is to teach humanity. AI can't teach things like ethics. It can't teach emotional regulation. It can't teach resilience. It can't teach how to sit in discomfort or disappointment. You know, that's the role of the educator. It teaches the humanity side of things. In the work that I do, working with people during grief, during the hardest times of their life and going through trauma, at the end of, things that are important aren't what we've memorized at school or what we've read on AI. It's the skills that we're taught, how to recognize grief, how to understand what anxiety feels like in the body. How do we sit in boredom? Young people these days, they don't know how to do that because everything is so easy, so accessible for them. So I think that is the role of the educator, to teach humanity. AI can't teach humanity. What we need to be showing and teaching our young people is what questions are worth asking and what type of people do we want to grow up and to be into the world, and what do we want to give back into the world. AI can give us information and it can point us in the right directions, but it can't teach us what love feels like. It can't teach us what joy feels like, and it can't teach us what sadness feels like, and it can't show us how to find the positive after adversity, or how to overcome challenges and use that to our advantage. You know, I always say there's no such thing as mistakes, only lessons learned, but we must learn the lessons for them not to be mistakes. And that's what the role of the educator is, I think, to teach us how to find these answers and how to ask these questions. AI can't do that for us.
Yeah, same question. The view on what else education, what is the responsibility of the educator?
Yeah, I think personally, I think the AI era arrived here way sooner than we ready for it. I think if you look at it, so from the first attempt around 50 years ago for intelligence to decade ago, with the first few models came out, until a few years ago when it became commercially available. I think us as a generally the education sector across the globe, I don't think it was ready for it, or at least they weren't proactive in that. So you mentioned about like a coursework, etc. So I think there is a huge need for the education generally to change the whole system of the assessment, learning, and go on. So from the AI perspective itself, that like, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Like any other thing, it has pros and cons. I think the advantage of that is some of the stuff that my panelists perspective, most importantly, provide opportunity and accessibility for wider people. In bracket, when we say that provide opportunity and accessibility for wider people, we assume that everyone has access to the internet, the smart device, etc., which fundamentally this correct, but let's imagine that for a second. So provide that make the education or experience more personalized, so it's going to be available 24/7. So in like a traditional education system, the tutor cannot spend too much time or more than certain amount of time with one individuals, but with AI, you have unlimited access to ask question, understanding different, ask for different example, etc., which is great. But I think the other side of that, I see two issues with AI, the way that we're using it at the moment, is that generally the learning process, most important part of the learning process is the trial and error. So we practicing something, we fail, and through that process of failing, learn just about how to solve this issue, we learn how to approach other issues. With AI, you're not going to get that, because you ask a question, the direct answer, you never fail. You never ask a question and challenge you and say, oh, I don't know, what do you think? So that trial and error is eliminated. That means that our capability as a human to be creative and problem solving in the next maybe 30, 40, 50 years is going to decline, and it's going to have its own challenges. The other problem is exactly what I said in my first, the comments, is that the softer skills. So the AI can teach, like I think you mentioned as well, the AI can teach you specialist skills, which is fantastic. But the softer skills come, if anything, it's going to make, if you just rely on AI for education, if anything, it's going to make your softer skill even worse, because you're going to learn in an isolated environment. You're not going to have the socialized in the environment that there are 50, 100 more people. You're going to ask your question in a very private manner from a device that no one can see that. So all of these soft skills are just going to decline. So now the higher education or education in general need to think about, if the AI going to take the heavy lift of the specialist skills development, then what's the role of the universities in developing the softer skill? Maybe in the next decade, the way that universities working and teaching and the engaging with the students, it might be completely different. Maybe 70% of that going to be more around softer skill and 30% around the specialist skill. But I don't think we are there yet, and that's why I think the AI arrived much sooner that we've been ready for that.
Thank you. So over the weekend, I said to my 15-year-old daughter, so Emily, what can AI not give you that your teachers are giving you? And after sighing at me, because I was interrupting her doing something on her phone, she said, well, emotional support, Mum. AI can never give me that. And I said, what else, Emily? She said, well, you know, Mum, teachers meet my friends just where they are. And she said, all my friends are at different levels, but my teachers meet them just where they are. And I, you know, coming from a 15-year-old, I thought that was really profound. So in February last year, along with my friend to the right of me, we ran an employability day. What we wanted to do was help some young people who'd graduated, but they were really struggling to find jobs. They were some of the most so they were from some of the most deprived communities in London, and they were from ethnic diversity backgrounds. And that day was really eye-opening for me. You know, from several points, we had some of the most educated and brightest young people in the room. And, you know, these young people sometimes actually lacked really basic soft skills, which you know, which was really eye-opening for me. I mean, just want to give you some examples. You know, that there were, you know, 50-50 split between young ladies and young men in the room. The young ladies just were not putting their hands up to speak, you know, to answer questions. There was a real clear divide in the room. And, you know, I just really wanted to give those women confidence to have a voice, which they were not having in that room. Secondly, there was a gentleman in the room, masters in data science, the most intelligent young man. He was working in Tesco stacking shelves. There's nothing wrong with that, but there was such a huge wasted talent there. And I said to him, you know, would you like some mentoring afterwards? Because I couldn't get my head around why was this young man with a master's in data science so intelligent? Why? What was going on here? He was like, I can't get a job in tech, and that is my dream. I was like, what is going in my head? I'm like, what is going on here? So over about 6 months, I had one-on-one mentoring sessions with this young man, and honestly, his interviewing skills were abysmal. I've got to be honest. Any employer would not be hiring him, and he said, "I've had about 200 interviews." And his interview, it was really not great. So we kept on interviewing him, and I said to him, you know, go through the STAR practice, be really specific with your examples. And he just came on leaps and bounds. Anyway, I was working with a diverse supplier. They're called Data Gardener, and they're a tech supplier. I said to this man one day, Anjanish, I've got this amazing talent here. I said he just needs some support. So he said, you know, Lou, let me meet him. So I set up a 3-way conversation. And Anjanesh saw that, you know, this young man's potential. So anyway, took him under his wing. And so basically now, basically the young man, Habib, he now is working for on a project for the Royal Bank of Canada as a data scientist. And he is flourishing. He is flying. You know, for me, what we need is we need to take those young people and really where they are and one-to-one mentor these people. AI can never do that. But we need to meet those people just where they are and see what their skills and what their challenges are. And we need to close those challenges and meet those people just where they are. Like my daughter said, meet those people where they are. And, you know, every person has a place in society. We just need to find out their place and help them. That's
Thank you. Listening to you talk, you brought something to my mind, and I want to share something with you. I've taught for a number of years, and I've been through a number of places of work and so on. And then I started farming, and I had a very elderly person who didn't have any education, no primary education, of course, no secondary, and so on. And I had an interest in making walls out of basalt rocks. Although that gentleman, if I was to give you a big block of basalt and I asked to build a wall, there are lots of challenges. So this fellow, without any formal education, knew how to break the rock, because it was a huge hammer that you needed to break it. And then he had this spatial intelligence to know how to place the block. So I worked with him as a helper. So basically what I'm trying to say is there's this difference between education and intelligence. This fellow probably came from a very humble background. He couldn't go to school and all. He had the intelligence. And me, with all my PhD on my wonderful qualifications, I was like in awe to see how he could see. He would know how to fix that piece there and break it at that point. So very often teachers need to understand this, that our students might be struggling here in this subject, but there are things that they know. And I think it's very important for us to understand and recognize, like Dr. Ali said, they have lots of skills. But of course, you have many students in class. You don't have the leisure of that amount of time. But basically what I learned is that no person is stupid. Everybody has his or her own strength. It's up to us to bring it out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our panelists. Really insightful. And I think, Louise, you hit the nail on the head in terms of the responsibility. And I think as educators, it's not about just educating students, it's about advocating for them, being their sponsors. At UEL, we do a lot of that. We work with employers to find opportunities and to advocate for our students. So you can't just, provide education. That's not enough anymore. I think definitely the soft skills, the behavioral skills, it's really interesting. I also see the kind of the switch in importance, where some universities are still struggling to embed that into the curriculum. We're lucky we have that. That's one module. Is that going to change over the next years? Is it going to become what is going to be the importance? And with AI taking over a lot of those technical skills, it is more about the behavioral skills, the conversations, engaging young people so that they're not, I also have a 15-year-old just sort of staring at their phones. So, it can become a bit of a crisis if we don't kind of provide more than just education that young people can get. And I think the way we provide that education, so the experiential learning, as you were talking about in the classroom, we're piloting a new pedagogy, which is team-based learning. So students are not allowed to just walk into the classroom, sit down and be talked at. So they have to do pre-reading. They come into the classroom, they do a quiz to test their understanding of that. Then they get into groups and they have to come to a consensus about their understanding about the content or the topic. And the rest of the lesson is an applied activity on the topic. So it's, the lecturer takes really a different role. They're sort of more on the side facilitating, and the students are, just by virtue of being in the classroom, they are gaining communication skills, negotiation skills. I think this is the way we have to almost sort of force the learning of the behavioral skills, because behavioral skills can't only be taught theoretically. It's something that students need to build and gain, and I think that is the role of education, to change it from the passively sort of sitting and taking in knowledge, because I don't think students respond to that anymore. But thank you so much for our panel guests. If you don't mind taking a seat, I think we'll be calling you back a bit later. So Abias reminds us, happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, just breathe as if it is the greatest capital bestowed upon you. Receive your breath. So throughout the morning, we've explored resilience, adaptability, and well-being conceptually. But the next session allows us to experience some of these principles directly through self-observation, awareness under pressure, emotional regulation, breath work, and nervous system grounding. So I would like to welcome back the director of ABS, Priyanka Sinha, who's the founding trustee of ABS Wellbeing Charity UK and director of Wellbeing at ABS Limited. With a background in mathematics, IT, and data analytics, and a decade of experience with the Australian government developing evidence-based policy, she combines analytical rigor with a deep commitment to human development. Since joining in 2024, she has led corporate wellbeing programs, youth development initiatives, research projects, and international partnerships, championing approaches that strengthen self-awareness, emotional resilience, and sustainable performance. She also moderates ABS Global Webinar Series, enhancing our mental well-being in a fast-paced world, and brings together experts and leaders to explore practical solutions for navigating modern challenges and fostering positive change.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, that's better. I think I muted it by accident. How's everyone doing? Doing okay? Let's take a couple of moments to stand up. Stand up and get a little bit of movement happening in the body. I think we've been sitting for a little while. We are going to be seeing some more shortly. But so thank you so much, Charisse, to our lovely panel members, to Your Excellency, for all of your very valuable and wise words here today. So I think before I get into what Abhyas is about, I'm going to take you through an experience. So we're going to start with just stretching our arms and reaching them up. And just going to keep reaching the arms as high up as you possibly can. Good. And from here, slowly go ahead and lower your arms down when you exhale. Good. And then just come and take a seat. All right, so from here, we'll just plant our feet on the ground as best as we can. And just rest the hands onto our knees and with the palms facing up. So we've spoken a lot about the empowered role that educators hold with our youth. But we haven't had an opportunity yet to talk about how they can hold that role. And it all begins with inner regulation. It all begins with regulating ourselves in the environment that we're in, the pressure that we're facing. And that begins with connecting to our breath. And why do we say the breath? Why is it so important? So I'm not going to answer that question now. I'm actually going to let you experience it. So when you're ready, go ahead and close your eyes and bring your attention to your nose. Particularly, bring your focus and observe the breath moving through your nostrils. When you take a deep inhale in through your nose, breathe into your abdomen. Feel your abdomen expanding, almost like it was a balloon. Feel that breath move all the way up into your chest. Breathe deeply until you cannot inhale any longer. And then from here, Soften through your shoulders. Let your exhale move down through your chest, all the way down into your abdomen. And when you get to the base of your abdomen, draw your belly button into your spine. Again, take a deep inhale in through your nose. And take an even deeper and longer exhale through your nose. When you reach the bottom of your exhale, draw your belly button into your spine. Continue breathing in this way. And I invite you to just notice. Notice when you breathe in. Notice the way the breath expands into every part of your body. And notice when you breathe out, how there's a softening in your body and there's a letting go. Tune in and connect with the breath as it moves through your body. Your breath knows no future, it knows no past. It only knows what is here right now. It is the only tool available to you to tap into your intuition, to your creativity. The breath is also the element that feels your emotions, your memories, your tendencies, your behaviors, your patterns. Yet, it is the tool that can allow you to be present, that can allow you to let everything go that's standing in your way to tap into your creativity. When we speak about regulating youth, regulating those around us in our environment, the key lies in regulating ourselves, in regulating our breath. Continuing to breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your nose. In those moments of silence, connect within. Take this opportunity to really feel everything that you have experienced so far in this summit today. When you're ready, slowly bring your attention back to the space where you are sitting. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel your hands resting on your knees. Stay focused on your breath and just observe. And slowly from here, you gently open your eyes and come back to the space within. So what we've just experienced is an example of self-regulation. When we connect with our breath, it allows for oxygen to move into the brain, which then shifts us from that autonomic state to a parasympathetic state. So it activates our ability to process, our ability to reflect on what is happening. And from this place opens up our space for intuition, and also creativity. So we've spoken a lot about the role that educators play in this landscape that we are in today, where we know that it's not just about giving information, because that can be found everywhere with the rising role of AI. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do at Abhyas and why our program is so important for educators. So I'll just come over here. Yep. Thank you. Yes, I keep going. Thank you. So who is this for? Why is this even important? We're going to talk about the who element first. Yep. So if we look at young people, educators, and the future of the workforce, 957,000 young people are currently not in education, employment, or training. So we've spoken about this earlier today as well. So that's about 1 in 8. 1 in 8 young people are disconnected from education, from employment, from training pathways. It's also worse for those who are in SEND, or those who have a form of disability, physical or intellectual. These are disproportionately represented as well here in the UK. What makes this more complex is the rising teacher attrition. Across the UK, we're seeing up to 1/3 of teachers are leaving within the first 5 years of education in the system that we are in. We're seeing that student support is demanding, and it's continuing to increase. We've spoken about this here today in our panel discussion, the importance of students feeling supported through their journey as they leave education and enter the workforce. Schools, colleges, universities, they're constantly managing student well-being challenges, retention pressures, engagement challenges, and even we're seeing there's workplace sustainability concerns that are coming to the surface. So actually nurturing our youth today, it's about their inner world. It's not about directing and demonstrating, as has been very well spoken of today by our panel. It's about creating that space for awareness, as Louisa had mentioned, and Louise had mentioned. It's about meeting people where they are, not where we want them to be. It's that space of authenticity, and the importance of lived experience cannot be underestimated here. And of course, at the heart of all of this, in this environment, are our educators. They are the most consistent, influential figures that are with our youth. Yet, in very under-resourced and high-pressure settings, teachers themselves are burdened with emotional exhaustion, anxiety, and burnout. How much of this sounds familiar to you? How many of you experienced this as educators, or know someone who is an educator and is going through this process? Their own mental and emotional well-being is being influenced deeply by the environment that they're in. And that state that they are in is what influences the youth that they work with. It will impact the way they engage with students. It will impact if they are stressed or they are disconnected, how are your youth going to feel? Are they going to feel engaged? That's the element that we do ask ourselves. So the very patterns that our educators are wanting to support youth to break from, they are themselves struggling with this element, this constant need to want to have to always do, not having that opportunity to sit down and to just reflect or to open up opportunities for creativity and intuition. Next slide, please. So Abhyas's program is all about supporting the one who supports youth. If we want to support youth, it begins with supporting our teachers, mentally, emotionally, professionally, so that they can become the most resilient anchors in a very evolving and often chaotic system that we all face today. Next slide, please. What is this about? What is the issue that we're dealing with here? So according to the Young People in Work interim report that Sir Stephen Timms had mentioned today as well, it challenges the assumption that young people lack ambition. The evidence is showing that 54% of them do want to work. 30% want to move from education into training. 68% are determined to achieve their goals. And 69% believe getting a job is genuinely worthwhile. Yet we're still seeing increasing number of young people are becoming disconnected. So we're not seeing a motivation challenge here. We're seeing sustaining participation as the challenge. Next slide, please. Of course, at Abhyas, we're not here to say that it's about adding another rule or another to-do item in the educator's list. It's not about that. It's about nurturing them because they need this more. When? Well, next slide, please. When is this best time to do this? If we look at, according to the Young People Work interim report, the best time is at the age of 18, just before the age of 18. It's that critical transition point. Because at this point, we have many statutory support systems that end. We see tracking mechanisms that reduce. We see institutional oversight decreases. And we see more young people becoming vulnerable and becoming disconnected. For universities, the same pattern is being observed. We're seeing in the foundation year that students are withdrawing within the first semester or the first year. So obviously, that's a financial cost to the university as well. And we're seeing reduced continuation rates and a loss of belonging. I love living in London. It's very multicultural. And I can definitely say with a lot of the students that I work with on the ground, that the loss of belonging or feeling like they want to make friendships, community, is a really, really big priority for them. So that element exacerbates their ability to be engaged with the system as well. Next slide, please. Yeah. Where is this happening? So if we look at the institutional ecosystem, we have teachers, we have students, we have leadership, but we also have parents and community. So if we look at in the context of University of East London, a lot of the students here don't necessarily have that parental supervision. They don't have that community because they've come from international countries and they've come here to study. So the focus shifts. So that support is missing. So if we look at across education, health, and in the employment systems, I think we all agree they're very interconnected. I think we know that that's the case. So we're seeing this interconnected challenges, but we're seeing a shared impact. But also we're seeing an opportunity to build much stronger futures and improve the lives of our youth. In education, as I've mentioned, we're seeing retention reduction. We're seeing students being disengaged. We're seeing challenges with students attending the classroom in the first place, and we're seeing progression concerns as they progress through and not being able to enter into the workforce. From a health perspective, we're seeing much higher mental health challenges, anxiety, depression, the use of illicit substances, alcohol, smoking. We're seeing a rising level of emotional distress, the rate of suicide, impulsive activity. Just this morning, I found out that over the weekend, the neighborhood where I live, there was a stabbing. A 17-year-old stabbed a 15-year-old. 15-year-old is now in hospital under critical condition, and the 17-year-old is in custody. Our youth are not born like this. They're not born to be aggressive. They become that. They are wounded themselves, and it is our responsibility as adults to be able to look after them, to be able to nurture them, to support them, to come out of that state of emotional dysregulation and move towards a more conscious way of participating, of living and contributing to the society in a meaningful manner. In the workforce, I think we all know the facts here. We're seeing a growing NEET population. As the reports have shown, keep Britain working, young people at work. We're seeing reduced workforce participation. Our workforce is aging, but young people are not coming in as much as we need. So there's a disproportionate match there. It's affecting the economy. We're seeing there's a shortage of skills. We're seeing there's a loss of economic productivity. And in the communities, we're seeing there's social isolation, reduced belonging, increased vulnerability, and reduced social mobility. But all of these elements, education, health, workforce, communities, they're all interconnected, all beginning with education. Next slide, please. Why does this even matter? Well, these interconnected parts, if they're not supported holistically, then the entire system remains vulnerable, as we've just been speaking about earlier today. So in many places where education systems carry the burden of inequality, trauma, of attrition, strengthening the ecosystem, the institutional ecosystem, it's not an option anymore, it's essential. We have to do something about this, and now is the time. Thank you. If we don't do anything, these are the costs that we're dealing with. Institutionally, we're going to continue seeing reduced continuation rates. We'll see more students leaving before they can even achieve their true potential. We're going to see lost tuition revenue, so that's going to affect our universities and their funding. Higher support costs. We'll be seeing an increasing demand for well-being pastoral specialist support. Greater pressure on staff, systems, resources. On a society level, I think we've already spoken about how we're going to see fewer people, younger people, entering and remaining in the labor market. We're going to be seeing lower economic productivity, less output, innovation and growth for our economy. A greater demand on public service. So that means increased pressure on the NHS, on housing, welfare, and of course the justice systems. So overall, at a long term, we're seeing very, very high social costs as well. At a national level in the UK, if we have long-term youth worklessness, if we're not addressing this now, we're looking at £125 billion being lost every single year. Next slide, please. So if we want to really emotionally nurture our youth and help them to become resilient, to prepare for the new future, we first need to stabilize the adults. That's us. The responsibility sits with us. So investing in the inner well-being of our teachers, it's not about educator support, actually. It's much bigger than this. We're talking about a structural shift here, because that's what's needed if we want to have conscious, connected communities. So a regulated educator means a regulated learning environment. If I was sitting there, or if I had walked up over here and I was stressed and anxious about this morning's incident, because it happened literally 5 minutes away from where I live, how would you all feel? If I didn't regulate myself, stabilize myself, what impact would that have on you? This is why I wanted you to experience first. That was just a couple of minute practice. But at Abhyas, we offer a much more longer, more supportive program. A program that really allows and supports educators to be in that state of emotional regulation all the time, in everything that they do and in every way that they interact with youth. So if we have educators that are more regulated, we're going to see that students can be more effectively supported in their emotional regulation. Their ability to navigate change and respond to diverse needs will increase. Their presence increases, their confidence increases, their empathy increases, and even their ability to relate and connect with others in the community. Those elements increase as well. These days, I think we've all mentioned this in the panel before, but I feel it's so important to mention again, educators are not there just to give information. They're not there just to teach. They're our mentors. They're our facilitators. They're our role models. And they're our retention drivers. Next slide, please. So how do we do this? Next slide. Thank you. So the evidence supports that we need to look at preventative well-being. We need to look at psychological safety, trauma-informed practices, educator well-being, resilience building, and we also need to look at human sustainability. So we need to shift from how do we increase access, which is focusing on more students coming in, enrolling, and reaching more people, to focusing on how do we sustain that participation? How do we ensure that they stay throughout their education to the end and move into being more experienced, ready for the workforce, ready to contribute to society, ready to contribute to economic development in the country? Next slide, please. So Abhyas's program, what we're all about. The key concept of our program is built on the foundation of one acting as a catalyst of change. Through changing our own behavior, what we would like to see outside, what we would like to see be reflected outside. So our intervention programs are about understanding our own complexities before trying to resolve what's happening out there. So it's shifting from constantly having to fight fires to focusing on what's happening within, and then working from that space of intuition and creativity to really create change in the system. Next slide, please. So our program has 2 phases. Phase 1 is focused on self-awareness and better emotional regulation and stress management. And our second phase is focused on conscious lifestyle choices and inclusive approaches to collective growth. So phase 1, when our educators undertake phase 1, it gives them the ability to then carry that into phase 2, to be able to take what they've learned in phase 1 towards the community, towards the school system, and to work in a collaborative manner with other educators to create change in the system. Because ultimately, our educators know education best. We are just here to support them with their own emotional well-being. Next slide, please. And of course, no program is possible without conducting a proper amount of monitoring and evaluation. So we have here at Abhyas pre and post assessments that we conduct using internationally recognized scales, so that we can help educators to see how much they are also progressing in their journey. And at the same time, it's an opportunity for Abhyas to also adapt our programs to once again meet people where they are. Next slide, please. So our chance really is to start now. This is the best opportunity we have. If we want to prevent what can happen tomorrow, as I'm sure we have enough evidence in our reports that are showcasing what the future of our economy holds and what the future of our youth is going to look like. Today's reality, we have student well-being is a real issue. It's a challenge. Student retention is a challenge, their attendance. We're seeing there's mental health concerns, behavioral complexity, and we're seeing there's a widening participation. So we really need to be able to look at the interconnected parts: education, health, employment, social impact. And we need to ask ourselves, can we really be waiting? Can we afford to do nothing about this? Ultimately, this is our chance now to prevent it from getting worse. So our House's response is we are conducting a 21-day educator wellbeing program. The program is going to be available for sign up today. And basically over the 21 days, the group will have opportunities to experience 6 experiential sessions. And they will also be given practical tools for emotional regulation, for stress resilience, and for building strategies, and to build their own greater self-awareness to help them become more adaptive. And these techniques, the really good thing about our program is that they can be applied right away on the ground. Next slide, please. And today we're actually offering a discounted rate on our program. So for those who sign up with us within the first month or two, the fees are available on the screen. And of course, we are looking to do more batch, sessions continuing on over the months, but obviously the rates tend to reduce over time, the discounts that we are applying. So it's really an opportunity for all of us to work together to develop those practical tools for emotional regulation, and to also see how these programs can best support our educators to navigate that increasingly challenging workplace demand that they are facing. Thank you. This is just a little bit about our model and how we function. So we have well-being trainers, clinical psychologists, we have growth and collaboration experts, and research and policy development. But at the heart of everything we do, we have our courses. Next slide, please. So this is a quote that I'm just going to leave there on the screen because I think it's quite powerful about the strength of character and about how self-esteem is created, which comes from self-worth, even going through all of the uneven experiences that we have in life, which we know is a part of life. So thank you. Next slide, please. So thank you so much. I'll hand on back to Charisse. Thank you. What do you want to do? If there is no questions, then we can move on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Priya. We were going to have a Q&A session, but we are running a little bit over time. So I will just open it up to the audience to see if there are any comments or questions for the panelists instead of bringing them up, just save a bit of time. And then if not, we'll go to the closing remarks. Okay, all right. Well, as we approach the conclusion of today's summit, we now turn to our closing reflections. Throughout the morning, we've explored education from multiple perspectives. We've considered the future of widening participation. We've discussed progression and retention. We've reflected on workforce participation and transition readiness. We've examined the role of well-being and human sustainability within education systems. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Lashai Ben Salmi and Trey Sean Ben Salmi onto the stage. So I will just say a little bit about them. So Lashai is an award-winning author, publisher, TEDx speaker, entrepreneur, and international keynote speaker, dedicated to promoting cultural connectivity and empowering young people. She's the founder of Stepping Stones Publishing House, co-founder of Halley Yukon and RSA Fellow, UN Women UK Delegate, and I'm the Code Ambassador. recognized internationally for her contributions to education and culture and globally, and continues to inspire the next generation through her work in leadership, publishing and social impact. And Trey Sean is an entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, Amazon #1 best-selling author, and international keynote speaker, committing to advancing financial literacy and youth empowerment. An RSA Fellow, UN Women UK Delegate, and founder of Influencer Publishing House, has authored more than 11 books and delivers financial education programs to students and young people. Through initiatives such as I'm That Kid and 10 Seconds to Child Genius, he inspires young people to recognize their potential, develop entrepreneurial thinking, and build pathways towards financial independence. So I will hand the mic over.
Yeah, so first of all, I just wanted to, I guess, apologize on my sister's behalf. Can everyone hear me, Kate, by the way? Okay, perfect. Yeah, she's unable to join us, so I'll let my brothers introduce themselves and then I'll tell you a bit more about me.
Thanks for having us. My name is Paolo Bensami. I'm the second youngest of the Bensami siblings. I'm 17. I'm a publisher. I've published around 36 books. I'm a climate change activist. I plant 10,000 trees in Tanzania. We just spoke at the UN as a family. I'm also a TEDx speaker. But essentially, my mission is to help my peers discover what they'd like to do in their lives. And I help them to do that by working with brands in gaming, technology, as well as NGOs in Africa and around the world. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amir. Thank you for having us today. I'm a author, public speaker. Recently did a talk at the UN for my birthday, my 13th birthday. I've written and published over 13 books. And as a family, we've been doing talks in schools, SEN schools, and yeah.
So my name is Trey Sean. I guess when it comes to obviously the whole purpose of this event, one of which being education, I understand the importance of financial literacy. I guess from a young age, for me, financial literacy, I guess growing up, I understood the importance that it played in one's life. It shapes the decisions that you have to make about your future, whether you're forced into, I guess, for me, obviously, I have nothing against work. I run a business alongside many other partners. But let's say you may be forced into, I guess, heading into work early and not necessarily have that opportunity to go about pursuing certain passions of yours. Financial literacy to me, it's so important. It's so much more than just learning how to make money through one medium. When it comes to financial literacy, people tend to think about just investing on the stock market, and there's so much more to financial literacy than just that. You can literally be in a job at 9 to 5, and the importance that financial literacy plays is you're able to actually understand how to better manage your finances. You see, you can have two individuals, let's say one person who's making 2K a month, another one who's making 4K a month, yet that person who's on, I guess, that smaller salary actually understands how to manage their finances in a better way to actually position themselves, let's say, better for the next 5 to 10 years, maybe even 15 years even. You see, when it comes to financial literacy, it's about getting into that habit from a young age. I guess in my experience, I was very fortunate. Thanks to my mother, I was able to actually, I guess, start thinking about these things at the age of 14. So pretty much at the age of 14, I immersed myself into, I guess, the wonders of the stock market. I did have a mentor, so I guess I was very fortunate in that sense. But I guess for me, the most important part was just sticking to it. You see, early on in my journey, it wasn't all, I guess, sunshine and rainbows. It was brutal. There were many times I was like, look, I would rather be outside with my friends right now, just because, let's say, this lesson does seem quite tiresome. And there were several times I was like, you know what, I may not really get anywhere with this. I don't feel as though it's worth it right now. It did take many years for me to actually, I guess, put all this education into use, and I guess actually reap the rewards out of this, out of my labor, I guess. So today we go off into several universities across the UK, and we will be expanding into Europe in the coming academic year, just to actually teach students the importance of thinking about the future, regardless of how far-fetched that may seem. Like I'm 21, I definitely understand how easy it is to just put things off and be like, you know what, like I'm young, I have time on my side, I can just think about this next year and the next couple of years even. You see, I guess like we've gone through these things of whether it was the whole like GCSEs and so on and so forth, and feeling as though we have so much time until these exams come around, and then in the blink of an eye, all of a sudden we're there sitting these exams, and it's the exact same thing when it comes to your finances. I guess for us, when it came to actually running this company and going off into universities, there's a lot more rapport that we have with these students, given that we are able to, I guess, actually resonate with them on each and every struggle that they have. In my case, whether it was A levels and things like that, being able to actually understand what it's like trying to balance the two and actually juggle all these different responsibilities, and pretty much just going from strength to strength, showing them that there is no one way to go about starting your whole investment journey. And I think that that is the difference that makes the difference. Actually teaching students that it's just about getting started. There is no one way to get things done. I guess in my case, when it came to getting started, there was a slight barrier, just as I felt as though you needed to have a certain amount. You needed to have 100K to actually get started when it came to investing. Just as I guess when it came to when it came to, I guess, my mentor actually sharing his story, he was just like, look, like I started with, I think it was like 10, 15K or something like that. I was like, I'm 14. I don't think I have 10K in my account right now to actually start investing. So how exactly are we going to make this work? So then I started alongside my A levels and things like that, and pretty much went from strength to strength time and time again. And I think going off into universities and actually teaching them, yes, you can get started, whether it's investing in the stock market or something else, but actually teaching them the importance of managing and then looking to actually scale your income time and time again. And pretty much, I guess, understanding that that can grow into great things, provide that you have the discipline.
I think from what I've heard today and what I've spoken about for a long time, I'd say one of the strong factors in education that I think is missing, especially in young people, is natural curiosity. And I think curiosity comes simple to humans, whether that's starting the first fires or reading books or discovering things we never knew before. We're always naturally curious. Questions literally start every single one of our conversations. But I think in young people, I'm seeing the lack of curiosity in them. And it's hard to say it's young people's fault. I think it's got to do with the education system they're being brought up in. When was the last time you spoke to a kid and their aspirations for a career was to be a meteorologist or to become an astronaut or to go into space? From my experience, hardly any, because kids stop looking up. They stop being curious. They stop thinking outside of the box. Instead, they limit themselves to things they see. And not only things they see, but things that they're told are attainable for them. And that's what the education system now, quite sadly, is doing. They're telling kids what they should be rather than asking them who they are. Now, we see this in the world today. We see a lack of people who know who they are. And you can think about this right now, whether it's friends or families. If the people that you know that are closest to you in a professional setting didn't hide behind their profession, who are they? Right? If people didn't, if you asked people who they were and they didn't hide behind saying, I'm a doctor or I'm a philanthropist or I'm a charity operational manager, I'm an AI overseer, who are they really? And that's the question. So I think the way to solve this is to invite young people to conversations that they would never be involved in before. And that's what I spoke about at the UN, which is really inviting these young people into rooms that they would never have access into. And it's quite sad to see when I've been in rooms with parliaments, I've hosted dignitaries, presidents, and the lack of young people there. They're talking about rules that will affect young people, but young people aren't in those places. So I think that's the main problem here, is that young people, it's not that they aren't being curious, it's that they're not allowed to be curious. And I think another problem, that got me thinking today is also the lack of a promise in the world of careers. There's no promise. There's no 100% certainty that when a young person leaves education, they're guaranteed to get a job. There just isn't that certainty. And to a young person, they have all these criterias and they have this curriculum to follow, and there's so much structure, but we're telling them that when they leave school, they're people with masters and PhDs that can't get jobs. Now, how can they be certain about anything when they're hearing stuff like that? And so what we've tried to do as a family is engage young people in conversations that they would never be involved in before. We've taken kids to LinkedIn, we've involved kids in the UN. I work with an NGO that brings young girls in Africa without passports or any recognition whatsoever. These kids are orphans. They don't even know who their parents are. And they're bringing them into Barclays and MasterCard to learn how to code. And it's just amazing. So I think that's the main problem I'm seeing in education now. That lack of curiosity, the lack of opportunities. But just last but not least, I think the main thing is the disconnect possibly between educational institutions and corporate companies. I feel like, there's a lot of strain on the education system to get their students jobs, but we have to look at it. The education system practically spends around almost 2 decades educating our young people and sending them off into these mega corporations, which at the end of the day, these young people are going to work and spend their entire lives making these companies millions and millions of pounds. So why can't we ask these companies to do something, ridiculously small and give internships, give access to these opportunities and engage people in conversations? So that would be my input. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry, your sister couldn't be here. So I was introducing a female and I was looking and saying, oh, I've got the wrong person. But thank you so much. Really interesting to hear from you. And I think it's a really good point about young people being in the room and having a voice. So important, not just us elderly people talking about young people. So as we conclude today's summit, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Throughout the morning, we've repeatedly returned to the idea that widening participation is more than just access. It's about readiness, it's about belonging, it's about progression, and ultimately, it's about creating the conditions that allow people to thrive. Abias reminds us, growth is a quiet, relentless, personal event. It never demands applause. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to the Right Honourable Sir Stephen Timms and His Excellency Dr. Rajeshwar Jita. Thank you to all of our speakers, to our panelists, and to all of you that attended, both here and online. And a special thanks to our caterers, Sri Krishna Vadapav, for providing delicious refreshments for us all to enjoy during the networking, which is happening just now. So thank you so much. Thank you for your engagement, and please do join us for some networking. Thank you.